Here, I mean, my tablet went out again. So
You broke it.
it's,
It went right to black, right? Oh, right to that screen, yeah. I learned how to do that yesterday, to retrieve.
If your technology goes out, you can answer audibly, so. Thank you, John.
Commissioner Clark Coleman. Commissioner Kenizic. Chair Basham,
Here,
you have a quorum present.
next item, Madam Clerk.
B, Chair's remarks.
I have none at this time. Thank you.
C, approve the November 29th, 2023 meeting minutes.
Can I get a motion? Okay, we're gonna do audible because it's not showing up here. I just soon do audible. So it's motion by Commissioner Clean and second by,
Clark Coleman, I second.
oh, let's see, I don't see that on my screen here. Madam Clerk?
We have a motion by Commissioner Colleen and second by a motion by Commissioner Clark Coleman, second by Commissioner Colleen.
Because of this confusion, let's just do everything audible, okay? Okay, next item, Madam Clerk.
We need a vote.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can't see that. Okay. Oh, it did show up.
We should still vote on that. So keep going. Yeah. Mr. Chair?
Yes.
The public that's watching us on Zoom,
Okay, now it's showing up. Okay,
they, Mr. Chair,
yes.
the public that's on Zoom sees this voting board, even though you don't. So we should probably do both.
Are you voting?
Oh, sure. And folks on Zoom can see this.
Thank you.
So we need to do both, I think.
Okay, guys have it. Next item, Madam Clerk.
D, unfinished business. There is none listed.
Next item.
Item 1, under new business, forwarding a letter from Plant and Moran PLLC, the county's independent external auditor, regarding its annual audit of the county's fiscal year ended September 30, 2023 financial statements and its required communication.
Okay, I'd like to welcome Ms. Cora, our Auditor General, her staff, and her guests, including the treasurer of Wayne County.
For this item, it's just myself, Marcy Cora, Auditor General. This is just our standard communication that kicks off the fiscal year 2023 external audit by the external auditors, Plant Moran. This is a communication that's required. It outlines what the audit is going to entail. The external auditors met with Chair Basham, the committee for the Committee on Audit. They met with Chair Bellis, the chair of the commission, met with the county executive, and I believe they also met with the county treasurer. So this is just a required documentation that needs to be submitted to the leadership within the county.
Okay. And so is there any comments or questions? Commissioner Clean has a comment or question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Where are we at in the contract for Plant Moran to do our outside audit?
Plant Moran has the fiscal year 2024 audit left under contract.
So
And
they're
then
doing 23 here, they'll do 24. But will we need a new auditor at that point?
per the charter only allows Plant Moran to serve in the capacity as the external auditor for 8 years. And that would be their 8th year.
So next year, we're going to start the search?
Next year, we will have to start a search for another external auditor.
Forever. I mean, it's not-
Commissioner Coleman, go ahead.
So does that mean that they can never be the external auditor? Or that there has to be a space in between?
Space in between.
The way the charter is written, there has to be a 3-year gap before they can bid on the contract again. And just a little history, I believe the charter was written back many, many years ago, and it was similar to the city of Detroit at the time, but it was when you had the big 8 accounting firms. Now you're down to probably the big 1, maybe the big 2 that do governmental entities.
Yeah.
So I did do some research, for Tim Johnson and I were talking, we did some research with other entities, like I think Cook County was one I called, Kent County, I talked to the city of Detroit. No one has such language in their charter that prevents a firm from bidding on an external audit. But it would have to go to the vote of the people, and something to look at is maybe putting language in if the commission chooses, that allows the same firm to bid on an engagement, but at least have it go out for bids so that you're not limited to who you can engage as an auditor. That's from my experience.
Sounds viable.
So having said that, is there a timeline and when we could pass some kind of resolution to get on the ballot to, Deal with
That would probably be a question for legal.
yeah,
But it would be next year sometime if we did.
okay, but does legal want to jump in at this time or wait till next year?
Good morning, through the chair to this honorable body, Mary Parisian, Assistant Commission Counsel. It's the will of this body. If this is a matter that needs to be addressed, then our office can certainly look into it
Uh,
to move
We-
it along.
we were asking, so thank you.
Mhm.
Looking into it, thank you.
And they all come running in.
Yes, what was it? Probably 10 years ago, it was put on the ballot and it failed.
Oh, wow, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So could the language though be changed to put it on the ballot in a more positive way if we went out and tried to promote it with different communities? So we're in a conference call right now with the
The
Yeah.
legal minds.
legal minds.
I missed the question as I was running down the stairs because I was listening on Zoom upstairs. Yes, the charter would need to be changed in order to change the 8 years. I do think there are some other options that we should discuss with regards to that. Not now.
Right.
But there are some potential other options other than charter amendment that probably should be considered. So at some point, we just need to have a meeting to sit down and go through that to determine the best way to move forward.
But my concern was that we don't want to wait until the buses left the station. So
The retention of the external auditor is within the purview of Marcy, and ultimately, with this body. So the timing of that is again within our discretion. So if you want to start those discussions now or later, it's within this body's discretion to do so.
Commissioner Clean,
Yeah, Mr. Chair, maybe for our January meeting, we should have this as a discussion item and really go through what the options are.
and I appreciate that. I
Thank you,
appreciate your
sir.
comments. Thank you, sir. Okay, Commissioner Coleman?
And
You can pull the mic down. So
does the airport operate under the same conditions? So they don't have those restrictions?
Because they're not under the charter anymore.
Through the chair, the airport authority is not bound by our charter.
Yeah.
But I can't tell you that I know what they're bound by. I haven't read their rules. I just know they're not bound by our charter, which says the 8 years.
Marcy seems to have some input into
Yes.
that.
Ms. Cora?
The way the act for the airport is written, every 2 years, the airport goes out for bids. A selection committee determines the top 3 auditing firms to be selected, then that gets sent to the commission for approval. It's usually given to our office. We go through the proposals, rank them based on price, experience, and ability to perform the engagement, and then we make a recommendation to the commission.
Okay,
But it's
thank you.
every 2 years.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, anything further? Did we take a vote on this?
I need a motion.
I'll move to receive and file forward to the commission.
Support? Been moved by Commissioner Clean and supported by Commissioner Dobb. All those in favor, say aye. Or push your button.
There we
Yeah,
go.
push your button.
So they can just keep, yeah.
Motion carried.
Next item.
Item 2, discussion with the representative from the prosecutor's office, Fraud and Corruption Investigation Unit.
We have representatives from the prosecutor's office. We also have Honorable Eric Sabri from the treasurer's office, if you'd like to join us too. And I'm not sure if anybody else is online. Per the fraud investigative policy, we were required to invite the chief executive officer, the chief financial officer, chief judges of the circuit, probate, and recorder's court, clerk, register of deeds, sheriff, and the treasurer to take part in this.
Commissioner Clean, you had a comment or
Yeah,
question?
just
Sure.
Real quick before we get started, can you bring us up to date why this is an
Yep.
audit committee item?
That's exactly what I'm going to do right now.
I saw it come through and I'm like, is it audit, really? Government ops or somewhere? But, so there must be a reason. I'd like,
I'll give a little background first. This is
Yeah.
the fraud investigative
Thank you.
policy. And one of the items of the fraud investigative policy, if a county elected official, officer, employee becomes aware of facts or circumstances which cause them to suspect any kind of wrongdoing of a criminal nature, which involves county property or services, or which involves county employees while engaged in their scope of employment, he or she should promptly make a report to the Wayne County Fraud Corruption Investigative Unit within the prosecuting attorney's office. And I did provide a copy of the ordinance, some other items on it. The Wayne County Fraud and Corruption Investigative Unit has designated a single phone line to accept reports of suspected wrongdoing, which is known as a fraud hotline. Only the Wayne County Fraud Corruption Investigating Unit or other appropriate law enforcement agencies may investigate suspected wrongdoing of a criminal nature. Section 12, auditors, whether internal audit staff, members of the Auditor General staff, external auditors, or federal compliance officers shall be responsible for making recommendations on administrative and accounting systems which help and prevent, detect fraud and other wrongdoings, but not for investigation of specific cases of suspected fraud or wrongdoing. When during the course of an engagement, the auditors suspect fraud, they are need to follow the same rules as other employees of the county. Now, the reason why everyone is here today, in section 15, the Wayne County Fraud Corruption Unit shall confer semi-annually with the Audit Committee of the County Commission pursuant to the Open Meetings Act regarding completed investigations, recommended improvements in this policy, and the county fraud system. As indicated, the Chief Executive Officer, Chief Financial Officer, Chief Judge, Probate, Recorder's Court, Clerk, Registry, Sheriff, and Treasurer shall be invited to take part in these sessions. The Wayne County Fraud Investigative Unit shall also confer as needed with the Corporation Counsel regarding civil actions to recover county property, and the Auditor General shall make recommendations to the Audit Committee regarding fraud control systems. I had spoke with Mr. Bivens back in June to have him come in June so we could be in compliance with the semi-annually. At that time, he had just taken on the position, so we decided we would wait until December when he actually may have something to report. So that is why everybody is here. We invited them to attend. I'm not sure if any of the other elected officials are online, but I would like to thank the treasurer, Mr. Bivens and Tony Guerrero for attending.
Thanks for the invite.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good morning through the chair.
Morning.
Good morning.
Let me introduce to those of you who do not know J.B. Bivens. He is the director of the Prosecutor's Fraud and Corruption Unit. He's going to give you a rundown on what has been investigated. There is one current investigation that we cannot talk about as it has not been concluded. But with that, I turn it over to Mr. Bivens.
Good morning, everyone. James A. Bivens Jr. is my name, but my friends call me JB. But this year, excuse me, I've had a total of 5 cases. One is complete, one is pending. The other 3 were turned over to other law enforcement entities as they did not fit the preview of the policy that we're currently acting on. I could tell you about the completed case if you want to hear that.
I would.
Okay. It involved the juvenile detention center. You know, a few years back, the juvenile detention center moved from downtown out to Dickerson facility. That move in and of itself was not a good idea. That building is not made for juveniles. It is for an adults. Initially, when they moved over, they had the amount of room that they had to put the detainees in was insufficient. They had at one point 2 to 3 JDS, that's juvenile detention supervisors or specialists, watching 60 kids. That just was unmanageable. I'm not going to point fingers at anyone, but for reasons that I can't tell you about right now, the JDS officers were not following policies. And that kind of created some of the problems that existed. Now, on April the 15th, I think it was. No, let me look at the report. March 15th. There was an incident where 5 kids got involved into an altercation. And at one point, one kid claimed that he had been sexually assaulted. The case had began to be investigated by one of the staff of Warren Evans before I was contacted. But after being contacted, I was to determine whether or not there was any criminal wrongdoing on the part of the JDF staff. And now that is my focus when I get these cases. I'll make the determination whether it's criminal wrongdoing or something that can be handled in-house. Well, after interviewing like 12 to 13 people, all the people that were involved in this particular incident, the staff, the assistant director, the director had been transferred out when I got the investigation. By the time I got to talk to these folks, viewed the video of the incident, I was able to make a determination that there was no criminal wrongdoing. However, I did come up with some opinions on some things that could be done better. One of which followed the policy. Then there's 2 different policies, the state policy and the Wayne County juvenile policy. The assistant director who I spoke to, Rackin, indicated to me that he was redoing the policy to mirror the state's policy. And I think too that the officers, the JDS officers, have to familiarize themselves with the state policy. I think some of them are under the impression, or I'm like I know from interviewing them, under the policy that they can't use any kind of force in getting the kids to comply to their orders. And they base that on an incident that happened back in, let me see here. Back on May the 20th of 2020 at Lakeside Children's Facility, a young man was restrained and to the point that he actually ended up dying. So the state moved in and revamped the policy, but it talked about the restraint policy. It also mentioned force. Now, they didn't say that they couldn't use force. In some instances, the kids are not going to listen to you. You try to reason with them to do the right thing or to comply, they're not going to listen. So you have to use some force in some cases. The JDS people were under the impression that they couldn't use any force at all. So they would just let the kids do what they wanted to do. That was one thing that I came up with. The other is that they have a response team. If stuff get out of hand at the juvenile facility, they make a phone call. Sergeant Rackin was the officer in charge of the rapid response team. but it wasn't very rapid. It would take them sometimes 30 minutes to get to the facility to assist. A lot can happen in 30 minutes. I recommended that they have a rapid response team in place right there, 24/7. And they can do that by training the people that's already assigned there and to respond to situations like that rather than make a phone call and wait 30 minutes for somebody to get there. And I think basically that's about it. If you have any questions regarding this case, ask away.
Thanks, for the information. Any questions or comments from commissioners? Commissioner Kleen.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. What is your interaction relationship with the ethics board?
None at this point. The only time I get involved with them is when I define that a case is not criminally involved.
Yeah.
And it doesn't go to the director of that particular facility or to the director or person that's in charge of the requested information.
I was thinking if there was
requested
overlap, if
investigation.
somebody reported something to the ethics board
Through
that really belonged to you.
I can respond to
Yeah, go ahead.
through the chair. According to the ethics ordinance, and I'm a former member of the ethics board, if there is a belief that there's criminal wrongdoing in something that was reported to the Board of Ethics, they are to refer it to the prosecutor's office. And it would be referred to the Fraud and Corruption Unit if that's the appropriate unit. But there is a mechanism
Okay.
in
good.
the ordinance itself that creates the Board of Ethics.
And we got a copy of a policy section 73-3. Whose policy is that? Is that from the executive branch? Is that from the prosecutor's office? Whose policy is section 73-3?
My understanding is that was passed by the commission.
Right. It's a fraud investigative unit policy.
Yeah.
Fraud
Yeah.
investigation policy.
Response.
And where does that policy reside? Is that? I mean, whose
Well-
policy is that?
The counties adopted by the commission.
County. Okay, so it's for all offices in the county.
Right,
Correct.
correct.
Okay, real good. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Anything further?
I just have one other
Yes.
thing. I think in terms of communicating the policy throughout the county, I don't think that's been done. In both cases that I've worked, the one that's completed and the one that's pending came to me by way of Tony. It is supposed to come from the individual director or person that actually witnessed or feels that there was some wrongdoing, a criminal wrongdoing going on. So once an investigation started by someone else, it makes it a little bit more difficult to come behind somebody and conduct your own investigation. So I think the policy should be communicated to everybody within the county and make sure they know about it.
And I absolutely agree with you. I'm sorry, you done, Commissioner Kleen?
Well, I just.
Go ahead.
When was this policy established by the commission?
It's
70,
It's right at the end of it.
73, yeah.
The last.
Sorry?
The last adoption change was 2012.
I was
Yeah.
thinking that's.
So there's been enough time to notify everyone.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And do you have suggestions on how we can make this more public so the public would know about our policy?
The public, really,
I mean, that work for Wayne County,
Oh, sure. Ask that question again. What
Well,
was the question?
so that people know that we do have a policy.
Well,
that-
I think it's on the PeopleSoft. I mean, I can go, just have people go to the computer in PeopleSoft and look at the policy and familiarize themselves with the policy so they'll know. I don't think we have to do like individual or send out a mass email or anything like that. I think if they just go to that website on the PeopleSoft, I think it's there, if I'm not mistaken.
Thank you. Ms. Cora?
A suggestion could be, and once a year when they do the conflict of interest, maybe we should be consulting with personnel, human resources, that also each employee in the county can acknowledge understanding and receipt of the policy at that time. So that it's done annually, so any new employees coming in become aware of it.
I think it's a great idea. Thank you.
But I do have another question.
Sure.
Several years ago, when the policy first took effect, the county executive's office had their own, they called him an ombudsman who was handling complaints. I think then all the complaints were, that office went away and all complaints were directed to the fraud investigative unit. Are we ensured that that's still taking place with the county, that the county ombudsman is not handling complaints and of criminal nature and everything is coming to you? How can we be assured of that?
Yeah, but so far, yes.
I think 20 minutes.
I have a suggestion, and I should say, I'm Tony Guerrero. I'm the Chief of Legislation, Grants, and Community Relations for the Prosecutor's Office. There are two things. One is, as the Auditor General has indicated, perhaps the employees should have to, when we do the conflict of interest, perhaps the employee should also have to review the fraud and corruption policy. That would be, a quick way to mandatorily solve the problem. The other suggestion that I've discussed with Director Bivens that he did not articulate is the Board of Ethics has a link on the county's website. Perhaps it may be a wise move to place a link for the fraud and corruption unit on the website and advertise it through social media as well.
Okay, Ms. Cora?
I could just add too, for the current and any in future administrations, if there are any ombudsmen or inspector general, it should be publicly known that any matters that deal with suspected fraud or corruption should not be handled by those individuals, that all fraud and corruption needs to be directed to the prosecuting attorney's office fraud investigative unit.
Okay. Yeah, that would work.
Good suggestions, but. thank you,
Chair.
Ms. Cora. Sure.
If I may.
Yes.
Yeah, Eric Sabri, Wayne County Treasurer. We've had some relationships with the Fraud and Corruption Unit in the Treasurer's Office, and it's worked well. But I wanted to talk about something that I think needs more clarity. One is we have external issues, external fraud issues, and internal. We have to always be aware of internal fraud issues. So sometimes like cybersecurity issues, people are always trying to break into our system or send us phishing emails, trying to steal money and get money sent to them. So our position is when that happens, and if we suspect this, we always contact the IT department, because if you call the sheriff's department or the prosecutor's office, they're going to tell you, we don't know what to do with that. Call IT. So the IT department has to be involved sometimes before you even go to the law enforcement folks, because they're the ones who can go into that email and all the phishing expeditions they have out there. So that's one I want to bring up. Sometimes we have to work with the IT department even before we go to the prosecutor's office or sheriff. And also in my conversation with the Prosecutor Worthy, in the past, she said, you should handle this as any other criminal matter, and that is going to the law enforcement agency first. So it's going to the sheriff and see if they feel there's a crime is suspected, and then they would determine whether or not the prosecutor's office gets involved. So that's what she instructed me to do, is to go to the police, basically. Go to the police first, file a report, and then they'll determine whether or not this matter should come to the prosecutor. So because we did go to the prosecutor first and initially in one case, and we referred to go to the sheriff. And the other issue is that sometimes we go to the federal government first. If it's dealing with counterfeit money, we go to the Secret Service office. If it's dealing with interstate fraud, someone tried to buy property with a fraudulent cashier's check, for instance, in auction. So we went straight to the FBI And because we were able to get the property, we didn't deed the property, we were able to catch it before we sold the properties. They said there was no harm to us, so they didn't investigate. But they said that it would start with, because it's a federal related crime, that we went to the federal government first. So sometimes we deviate from what's in the policy based on the type of situation.
Appreciate it.
If I may,
Yes, sir.
in the policy actually states that if an employee suspects wrongdoing of an employee, then they should contact the office, or services that are rendered by someone that's working with the county to contact the fraud investigative unit. Now, if something happens by a citizen that's, for example, phishing on the emails and whatnot, then that's something that law enforcement wouldn't handle. The fraud department wouldn't handle that. Yeah. So yeah, you did right by going, to the local authorities on that.
For an example, I think many of you are aware, several years ago, we had an audit we were conducting of the telecommunications unit within the county. As we were performing our audit procedures, we came across what had been suspected possibly wrongdoing on the purchase of cell phones. So we immediately contacted Mr. Bivens. We met with him several times. He asked us if we could do some additional procedures to try and see if we could quantify what the extent of the possible wrongdoing of the purchasing of the cell phones. So we went through those procedures and we provided our data to his office, and then they performed the criminal investigation. So we worked very well together on that.
Legal counsel.
Oh. Go ahead.
Through the chair, so yes, as it's been stated, every situation that could involve fraud or criminal nature is not covered by this policy. This policy is for county employees or elected officials. If you suspect wrongdoing by another employee as they're acting in the scope of their work or related to county property, then you contact the fraud investigative unit of the prosecutor's office. The ethics ordinance actually states that when the ethics board receives a complaint and it appears to be criminal in nature, they do nothing. They immediately forward that to the fraud department. They review it. If they determine it's criminal, they keep it. If not, they send it back, and then the ethics board can move forward with it. So that is in the policy. I also want just a point of clarification that the current fraud policy does indicate that the director of personnel for the county is responsible for doing several things we have listed in order to make sure that people are aware of the policy. And so when this policy was revised in 2012, they were supposed to make sure that all of this fraud policy was included in all of the county policy manuals. They were supposed to distribute it to everyone. And as new employees are hired, new directors are hired, they actually are responsible for giving it out. So at this point, we're going to assume that they're doing their jobs and everyone is actually aware of the fraud policy. Now, could they potentially add that policy to the ethics piece? I'm sure that potentially that can be done. But right now, the ordinance does require certain steps to be taken and to make sure that everyone is actually aware. And at the time, I have another one, but I see you want to chime in.
Just rubbing my mic. No, actually, how do you know the personnel department is actually doing their job?
So I guess you could call them in and ask, and we could have Darcel report back or something to just confirm that they are indeed making sure that all new hires have received the policy and are aware of it, and that these policies are properly posted as required, and placed in all of the manuals, personnel manuals. So perhaps the administration can just come back to this body with a confirmation of that.
So if Darcel's on it, it's working. So Darcel, you on it? Thank you.
And then my last comment is related to the ombudsman. So, and I don't remember what year it was, but there was a point in time where it was discovered that most people were aware of the ombudsman and they didn't know how to contact the fraud unit. So does the fraud unit still have that 1-800, the special line?
Yeah, we have a hotline.
Okay, so that's when I believe the hotline was established to make it clear that this is where you call for fraud. And I guess the other point would be, because at that point, most people went to the ombudsman, it wasn't clear at that point in time, and actually I think it came out, they did. So the question, just like you said about personnel, how do we know now what type of calls are going to the ombudsman and what process is in place to ensure that if the ombudsman gets something that they're not supposed to, one, be aware of, because especially if it's related to the administration, and that was the issue. It was a big conflict because an employee reports something to someone who's appointed and working in directly in the CEO's office, then are people likely to make that report, and is that report likely to come back? And that was a huge issue, if, for those of you who were here may remember, and that was the reason why I believe the ombudsman's position was discontinued and that hotline was created for the fraud office. So perhaps more information from the administration regarding that position to make sure you're not having those same issues that you tried to resolve a few years ago aren't reoccurring, since the position is now back with the county, is our understanding. And maybe we can confirm that it's back with the county, but I'm pretty sure it is.
When we speak, excuse me,
Sure, no.
when you speak about the ombudsman's office, are you talking about the IG's office, Inspector General's office, and what was it here in the county?
Who is the Inspector General?
There was, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there was a couple inspector generals at one time.
Okay.
No, and I don't know if,
Is that what you're referring to or no?
Mhm.
well, no, I was referring to, and perhaps, I hate to, well, I'm not going to put anyone on the spot. Perhaps someone can confirm or clarify whether that position does exist. I saw some recent emails where I thought it did, and I think that's why Marcy inquired initially about it.
Okay.
But it's our understanding that that position currently exists, but maybe we're wrong. I don't know.
Ms. Cora?
Because as Alicia talks about the ombudsman, the inspector general, I think it may have started off as an inspector general and turned into an ombudsman, or it might have been the other way around.
Okay,
But it was one, I believe, in the same person, and then it did go away.
thank you.
And Commissioner Kling?
Yeah, thank you. Sounds like we need an investigation to see if the ombudsman and see if there's still a live phone number in that matter. But Mr. Chair, with the issues that have been raised here, and I think getting the fraud unit phone number up on the county website, I think is an excellent suggestion. We do have to figure out this matter of still what exists in the executive branch for ombudsman, inspector general phone numbers. But we need to take action on this, and if we're going to add it to the annual ethics, to have people review the policy there, can we get a draft of what that should look like and how we should get it approved? I don't know if that's the Auditor General that can put that together. But they're important issues and I don't want them lingering around. So I think we need someone to put together, these are the steps that are needed to be taken.
So maybe the Auditor General and our Commission Council get together and come up with some suggestions?
A possibility could be, and it's up to the pleasure of this body, that at the next committee on audit, maybe we can ask for representatives from the county executive's office and personnel to explain their processes.
Sounds good to me.
And Mr. Chair, I'm
Sure.
sorry, and then that might be a guidepost from where to
Okay.
go from there. Okay, that sounds
Thank
good.
you.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Tony?
We welcomed this dialogue, and we just wanted to thank the committee for allowing us to come in, shed a little light on what's been done since Director Bivens has been on board. We can't thank you enough. It's one of those things where we know that we're supposed to make a report every 6 months. We want to make certain that we do so. And believe me, our accessibility is without question. I think everyone on this committee knows that whenever there is an issue with our office, if you can't find who you want, call me and I'll get you what you need.
And that's the truth. So thank you. Anything further? Ms. Cora?
I would just like to add too, this will be an item that'll appear every, I'd say, June and December going forward.
Beautiful.
So do we table this to our next meeting or do we, okay. I think I'll just table this to our next meeting.
I don't think we table,
Just, there's no.
not the report.
Up.
Okay, we'll put it on the agenda. So, Commissioner Dobb.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Marcy, are the recommendations from the fraud unit something that the Auditor General's office or this committee, do we follow up on those recommendations to make sure that they are completed? or who makes sure that like the processes are being followed or whatever they say needs to be done is actually done?
As far as when they determine criminal nature, so determine that controls are in place to prevent it from happening in the future. For the one audit that we were part of, which was the telecommunications, by working with the prosecutor's office, we came up with recommendations for the Department of Technology that they implemented. Then we followed up with the corrective action plan and made sure that those changes were implemented. At that time, it was a segregation of duties issue. One individual was ordering the phones, receiving the phones, and we made sure that there was a segregation of duties there. But I would think any closed cases that were of a internal control issue, we probably need to work with the prosecutor's office to go back later and make sure that whatever was not working, the controls are in place to ensure it is working.
Okay.
However, but we need to be aware too, if you have collusion and things of that matter, there's no internal control in the world that can prevent
Right,
that.
especially with a matter such as the JDF in this issue. I'd like to know who is making sure that his recommendations are being followed. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, and Commissioner Duff, following up on that, I think for this committee, because this report is assigned to this committee, that after these discussions and we're talking about drafting, you know, what should we do on the website or in ethics? I think in that proposal, then we can zero in on these are the people to accomplish this task. It might not be this committee, but based on the discussion coming out of here. And Mr. Chair, I want to be clear, on the next agenda, we'll have representatives of the executive's office, as well as personnel specifically,
I'm seeing a yes from the Auditor General.
both. One to have a discussion on from personnel, human resources, how the policy is being disseminated and that, and then from the executive's office, ombudsman, inspector general, phone numbers, what's going on there. Okay.
Sounds good.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. We done with this? Okay, next item, Madam Clerk.
F, such other matters as may be properly submitted before the committee.
Anything else? Anything else? Okay, next item, Madam Clerk.
G, public comments.
Is there anybody from the public who would like to comment? Second time, is there anybody from the public who'd like to comment? Mary, you want to comment about your sweater? No. Anybody from the public like to comment? Anybody last time from the public like to comment? Okay, next item, Madam Clerk.
Adjournment.